I figure I'll talk for about 3 hours and then I'll tell you what happened in the Dodger game. So if you could take a seat, that way we'll finish by 9 o'clock. Welcome, everybody. Let me first welcome our council members, starting with our Mayor Pro Tem, Mike Detoy, Councilmember Stacey Armato, Councilmember Mary Campbell, Councilmember Raymond Jackson. Our Public Works Commissioners is Kathy Dunbabin, former mayor herself, David Graythen, Jan Britton, I saw you. Good to see you. Parks and Rec Commissioner Barbara Ellman, Civil Service Board Member Bob Wolf, Planning Commissioner Steve Izant. I see our distinguished Superintendent, Dr. Jason Johnson. I know that the President of the School Board, Stephen McCall, is going to try to make it, but may not be able to make it. And I understand that Maggie Boley LaMonica, one of the school board members, also may try to make it if she's able to. Hermosa Beach Chamber of Commerce President, Jessica Accomando. I don't know how you find time to attend all these things with your schedule, but I'm glad you're here. And one of your board members, Brian Dunn, is here, as I understand it. Hi, Brian, of Details Tile and Stone up on PCH and 9th, which we drive by every day. Thank you for being here. Is there anybody I left out other than our distinguished directors, our lieutenant, our emergency services coordinator, our city clerk, Eddie Sarmiento and Brandy Villanueva? If I missed you, it's not because you're not important. It's simply because I want to start so that we can get to the Dodger game. The state of the city of Hermosa Beach is strong. And as we confront challenges that we share with private and public sector partners, getting stronger all the time. I'll address 7 topics, and then I and the city staff will field questions. The 7 topics will be your voice in our city government, our budget, public safety, infrastructure, our COVID response, and our support for our business community, our schools, who is an important partner for us, and finally, sustainability of us as a city and us as a community. I dubbed this address Back to the Future, not just because I wanted the opportunity to wear a vest in reference to the movie that I love, but I wanted to focus on both our work responding to the COVID-19 pandemic and managing the city's day-to-day operations in a period of disruption, but also what we're doing to prepare for the future, which is another one of our obligations to you. We've been, for the last 18 months, focused on keeping the lights on, making sure that the city continues to provide the services that it needs to through the pandemic. Hopefully sooner than later, we are going to shift back to the future, back to normal operations, where we not only manage those day-to-day operations, but we start tackling some of the bigger, longer-term issues that we all need to attack, both locally as well as at every level of government who are our partners. In the COVID-19 pandemic, the city transformed its operations because it had to. We responded to the ever-changing demands of the COVID-19 pandemic, the rules that we all had to live under, and met the community's needs. The pandemic isn't over, but we know more about COVID-19 and its spread, which enables us in part to be here in person tonight. I thank you all for wearing your masks. I'm unmasked while I'm up here, but when I give the podium up to one of our staff members to answer your questions, I will be putting my mask back on. So I thank you all for keeping your masks on while you're shoulder to shoulder together as a community. We, as a city, share challenges that every other public and private sector entity is sharing right now, including a tight labor market. So we have some positions that need to be filled at the city that have been open for some period of time, either because we froze them, because we were concerned about our ability to balance our budget during the pandemic, or because we've simply had resignations. Turnover is part of what we do as a city, just like it is for any other organization. We are meeting those challenges thoughtfully and with determination. Our city manager and her directors and her HR personnel are working on recruiting the best talent that we can get and picking the best and brightest out of those people. And we continue to add people even as people make the transition to other positions. And even as we have positions open up for a variety of reasons. Over the past year, we strengthened city operations and we began to create a more interactive, walkable, bikeable, and welcoming cityscape. And the International City Managers Association prepared a video, which in part profiles our city manager, Suja Lowenthal, who is on her way back from a much needed vacation as we speak, but her deputy is here with us. So you're going to see her in the video. I'd like to show it to you now to give you just a little bit of a window into how we've met some of the challenges during the pandemic.
Hermosa Beach is a great place to live because it is a coastal city. The beach is absolutely beautiful here. The quality of life is amazing here. It has an award-winning school district. It has a well-run city and a dedicated team of city staff that help everything run and make everything great here.
It's special to me because not only is the police department fantastic, but the community members love us. They're all part of the team.
Hermosa Beach is special and a great place to live, honestly, in my opinion, because of the intimate nature of our small business community. And they care about what happens with the future of Hermosa Beach. They're involved in decisions that are made and the future of this community.
Because it's such a small and compact city, it brings all of us together. It compels all of us to work together in ways that I don't think is possible in larger cities.
Hermosa Beach is over 100 years old. We're on Santa Monica Bay in the greater Los Angeles region. We have 20,000 residents who love to live here for all the recreational amenities we have and our proximity to everything else that greater LA has to offer.
Our response to the pandemic, first and foremost, to act as quickly as possible, and then to create opportunities for people to do the things that they need to do to conduct their lives in ways that were different from before. This led to our Hermosa Shines plan, which is our community's recovery and resilience plan. It's our effort to help our community to bounce back, but also to bounce back in a very resilient and sustainable way. SHINES is an acronym for safety, health, infrastructure, new technology, economic development, and service. Our first and foremost priority was public safety. My initial plan to bring Hermosa Beach back from the economic impacts from this pandemic included bringing the executive team together quickly, right away. This includes all of the members of my leadership team, and we met daily. We met daily to talk about the impacts of COVID and the pandemic on our residents, on our businesses. So for brick and mortar businesses such as the yoga studios that weren't able to have their classes indoors, we invited them to do it outdoors.
We had the opportunity to do outdoor dining decks with the complements of music outdoors. We had the opportunity to have more advertising outdoors with A-frames and banners saying what you could come and take out groceries from various restaurants, or you could get your takeout. We had community members organizing efforts to shop local and pick up. We had a bunch of efforts the city really championed and allowed and extended themselves beyond what were regulations before to allow the businesses to reach beyond and try and figure out how to stay afloat during the pandemic.
They were very quick to act and approve dining decks, and that made a huge difference for us. They allowed the outdoor music, which other beach cities, still have yet to do. Continue to have discussions with the city at all levels about things that we can do.
So as a result of the pandemic, the Economic Development Committee at the city formed, and the stakeholder group, which is made up of a bunch of business owners, property owners, and so forth in town, as well as some planning commissioners and city council members, to create a force of people who could decide how to move forward out of this pandemic and how to really help Hermosa move into the next phase of really flourishing as an economy.
You can see right here on Pier Plaza and in downtown Hermosa Beach that we've transformed the roadways and the public spaces to allow our businesses to thrive during the pandemic. And they dovetail well into our efforts to create a walkable, bikeable community.
With the lane reconfiguration in downtown Hermosa Beach, we added a bike lane on Hermosa Avenue and Pier Avenue. This has been a tremendous benefit for all of us who love to bike, who love to skateboard, who love to just be in the outdoors and actually move about the city differently.
We needed to make sure that our community who had these bikes and was using these bikes were able to keep these bikes safe. And we were able to get out into the areas where a lot of the bikes started to interact with pedestrians to make sure that they were safe, and engage in education programs using social media to get the word out, be safe, but enjoy, and let's use our bikes to the fullest extent. We became a much more relevant part of the city partnership, and we worked with all the city teams. We developed a program that we call front lawn meetings. If there was a neighborhood issue, a concern, or just wanting to get to know the police department a little bit better, we would ask somebody to host it in their front lawn. We would go to them, they could invite their neighbors. And Project Secure was an operation where officers would drive around in the routine patrols. When they would see something that was a potential crime, a garage door open, they'd either go knock on the door, they would try and reach the owner, and if they couldn't, they would do what they could to secure the location. We developed a Project Secure card, which basically had a little bit of information they could fill in on this date at this time, and we dropped that inside the garage before we closed this. Huge success. We had community members calling us, thanking us, sharing it with their neighbors, and just the talk of Project Secure was something that ultimately created more awareness and more safety because people started locking their stuff.
What's next for our city is a future filled with opportunities that are born out of the lessons learned through this pandemic. We have, as a city team, realized how resourceful we are, how adaptable we are, and our residents have this opportunity to experience this new city hall that we have, this new approach to public service. We realize that we can adapt quickly, and we do adapt quickly.
And you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of many of those staff members who were touted in the video. So think about your questions as I work through the topics that I want to cover. So very briefly, I wanted to start with your voice in city government. We've seen around the country voter suppression efforts. There's no other way to describe it. But we in Hermosa Beach and LA County and the state of California have gone in the opposite direction. We worked with, in this past year, the Census Bureau in LA County to make sure that people responded to the census, not only in Hermosa Beach, but as far and wide as we could put the message out, to make sure that our representation, our funding matches the needs that we have in our community. Years ago, the voters approved a redistricting effort in our state that is made up of citizens who draw districts for electoral office. That is the type of thing that makes sure that we don't have one party or the other drawing districts, so that people are represented as well as they can be. And in Hermosa Beach, starting next year in 2022, you are going to get to vote in city council elections on even numbered years, so that we increase turnout and we also reduce costs of our elections. So your city council candidates will be on the same ballot as your gubernatorial candidates, your Senate candidates, your congressional candidates, and your presidential candidates as well. All of this is going to maximize your voice as well as save the city money. The next topic I want to briefly touch on is the budget. This was a big one for us this year, and it has been since Mary Campbell was our mayor when we first had to impose restrictions on our economy and our businesses as a result of COVID-19. We were very concerned from the get-go about what COVID-19 would do to our revenue streams. So we froze a number of positions. We ultimately were able to balance our budget every year through the pandemic without any layoffs. We did that in part by using some funds that were in reserve. We also got some American Rescue Plan funds, and we also repurposed some sewer funds that we did not need for that purpose because the council in 2015 had initiated a sewer fee, which pays for the maintenance and upgrade of our sewer system. With all of that, we were able to balance our budget, keep our staffing levels where they were or where we'd like them to be, given the other challenges that I mentioned of a tight labor market, without dipping into our rainy day fund. Our rainy day fund continues to exist at 16% of our operating expenses, which is what the Government Finance Officers Association recommends. So we are continuing to maintain best practices with respect to managing our budget and our ability to pay for the city's services. We've seen in preliminary revenue reports of late that revenue is higher by about 4% this year than last year. That's a good sign that our economy is recovering, and we can all cross our fingers and knock on wood that that process continues and we continue to get back to as close to approaching normal as we can, given what we've all lived through. We have an upcoming revenue study. There is no certain date for it yet, but we will also, as we come out of the pandemic and as well as what we would do on a periodic basis, examine our revenue streams, make sure that they're up to date, and make sure that they're adequate to meet the expectations of our community in terms of the services that we provide. Public safety. Let me first start with something that doesn't fit neatly into the State of the City address, but is an extraordinary and sad event in the city of Hermosa Beach, which we just had a press release about today. You recall that we had a fatality on Memorial Day, Friday night of Memorial Day weekend. A gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Woods passed away that evening. In conjunction with the Sheriff's Department Homicide Bureau, we have determined that that was a death at the hands of another. It has been determined to be a homicide. A suspect has been arrested and is in custody. Lieutenant Landon Phillips can answer more detailed questions if anybody has them. And there is a press release out, so this should be the subject of news reports going forward, which I'm sure will include more information on the details from our police department. Let me shift briefly to talk about LA County Fire. You all know that several years ago, we had a city fire department that was struggling in terms of staffing and cost management and coverage for our city and the services that we provide. And we decided to contract with LA County Fire. LA County Fire continues to provide an excellent level of service for us. We get monthly reports on call times for ambulance response in the city. They continue to be good generally. Our most recent ambulance report showed that we are showing some delays, which are of concern in ambulance response times. And we got the report from County Fire that that's largely a result of challenges that every city is facing, because what they're finding is increased wall time. And what ambulance drivers and EMTs and firefighters call wall time is the period of time that they have to wait at the hospital before the person they have delivered to the hospital can be admitted and put into the custody of the hospital. And because of the challenges our healthcare sector is facing, those wall times have grown. And those challenges that the healthcare sector is facing include an increase in admissions as a result of COVID-19, as well as the same labor challenges that we have and that the private sector has in terms of staffing their hospitals and their emergency rooms. So this is a challenge for governments at all levels. It is a multi-factor challenge that we are addressing with our peers and partners in government and in the healthcare sector to try to make sure that we can continue to get there when you need us. Our police department continues to do excellent work under the leadership of Chief Paul LeBaron, Lieutenant Phillips, Lieutenant Scheid, and the rest of the command staff and our patrol officers. Since we agreed on a contract with the Police Officers Association a couple of years ago, we are net positive 8 police officers. So we have increased staffing as we expected to make sure that we deliver on our commitment to you to provide the maximum amount of public safety that we can. Our crime trends mirror what's happening regionally, and they have, generally speaking. So in terms of the fluctuation up and down with respect to property crime and violent crime, it generally mirrors what we see happening in the community. Our community generally is a safe community. So relative to the other cities, our numbers are good and they reflect a safe community. But as far as the trends go over time, we are part of the region and we see some of the same changes that the region has seen. The department has launched a number of crime prevention programs. You heard about Project Secure. That's what happens if you leave your car window down or your garage door open at night and an officer is driving around, they'll just go and they'll close your garage door, leave a card to let you know that it was them who did it. They're trying to make sure that we harden the target to make it more difficult for property criminals to come to Hermosa Beach and commit crimes. The police chief has been outstanding and his staff have been outstanding at having front lawn meetings. I've participated in front lawn meetings for everything from the shooting we had at Hermosa and Second about a year ago to concerns we've had about e-bikes on Hermosa Avenue. There is no issue too small for the police chief and his sergeants and lieutenants and patrol officers to come out and meet with you and your neighbors to talk to you about an issue of concern. In partnership with Redondo Beach, we also operate drones, which is another piece of equipment that allows us to really be effective in terms of tracking crime and preventing and deterring crime. We've adopted a domestic violence advocacy program. So we have a counselor who responds and assists with concerns about domestic violence in our city. We have wraparound services for our homeless population. This is an issue of great interest to the community for obvious reasons. If you go to the city website at hermosabeach.gov and you search for the term homelessness, you will come to the page that has our homelessness plan and all of the resources that we have available. It's not only an issue of our city staff or our police department staff, but we have mental health resources that are brought to bear. We know what our population is from our annual homeless counts. It has increased just as the region's population has increased, roughly from somewhere in the teens to closer to 30 at this point. That is a significant increase that mirrors what's happening regionally. It is a manageable number for our staff and for the resources that we bring to bear. We are in contact with our homeless population to make sure that they are safe, our community is safe, and that they know that resources are available to them and that we will connect them to those resources whatever they are willing. That regular contact with them is our strategy for making sure that our community is safe and that we make the transition to the extent we possibly can to put homeless people into service so they can get the health care, the mental health care, and the housing resources that they need. We've also had a summer of upheaval in policing, as you all know. The police department has responded. We've communicated with them, both in our public meetings and behind the scenes, about how much we care about those things, how much we celebrate the fact that our police department has a very good record of respecting the dignity of everybody they come into contact with. But the police department isn't leaving that stone unturned. They have a new mission statement, and they've updated their use of force policy. They've revised their pursuit policy. They've conducted a management study in conjunction with the California Police Officer Standards and Training Association to study their own efficiency and effectiveness. And they've put information on their website so that every member of the public can see the basic data and the basic governing documents and guidance documents that govern how we as a city and how our police department does its job. The documents that you can find on the transparency page on the police department's webpage on our site includes a document entitled Where We Are that gives you an inventory of what HBPD has done to respond to some of the concerns that have been raised nationally about policing and how it interacts with communities. They've also prepared a document titled Policing with 21st Century Technology. So for those of us who are concerned about privacy and civil liberties, we, with increasing technology, have the ability, like drones, to track folks more than we ever have before. What we do with that information, how we use it to good effect, is an issue that we raised with the police department, and they took that on and they examined best practices and they put together the document called Policing with 21st Technology, which is an interesting read and tells you how we manage information that we gather in the course of our law enforcement functions. The next topic I'd like to touch on is infrastructure. We have everything from going on from the more mundane tasks of implementing Plan Hermosa, which is our general plan, which at this point is Director Robertson's department, and zoning updates and Planning Commissioner Izan. Not the sexiest stuff, but essential to creating the community that we want making sure that the uses of land in our community are what the community expects and are in harmony with the uses that are around them. Capital improvement projects, an ongoing priority for us. We have staffing challenges citywide. We have them in part in public works. So we have needs in terms of engineering, needs in terms of field staff to turn projects around. And we're in a tight labor market for getting projects done and for contracting work out. So at every level, we do have challenges, but we have continued to push forward and accomplish things. So this council chambers has new audiovisual equipment, several years in the making, but now you're going to get to see whoever's up on the dais or whoever's at the podium and hear them much more clearly if you're at home and participating by Zoom than you might have previously. At Clark Field, we upgraded the electrical systems. We renovated the storage shed and dugouts for the Little League. We did a structural assessment of our parking structure. With respect to street improvements, we have repaved almost 5 lane miles in the city from every corner of the city to another. And we continue to do that, and that continues to be a priority for our public works staff. We've built over 20 new accessible ramps for access to our sidewalks around our community. We've repaired, replaced, and added over 1,400 square feet of sidewalk in the city. We've restriped our public parking lots to meet ADA parking standards to make sure that we're providing accessibility for folks who need it. And in the one that often is the one that folks are most interested in because it's an essential part of our infrastructure, we have renovated over 1.6 miles of our sewer infrastructure in the city. And we continue to work on not only that, but all of the paving that we need to get done in the city. So we continue to push forward on the nuts and bolts of the city services that you have asked us to provide. In addition to that, the capital projects that are underway or anticipated in the near future include the Parks Restrooms project. We have renovated or new park restrooms going in at 4 of our parks: Clark Field, South Park, Seaview Parkette up on Prospect, and Fort Lots of Fun up on Prospect. If you've been by those parks, you'll probably see green fencing around it, which means ground has been broken on those projects. So we can all look forward to seeing those projects come to completion in the near future and upgrading the amenities at what are very popular parks in our city and all very heavily used. In the future, we're going to renovate the Clark Building, one of our historic buildings at Clark Field. That project is going to be a comprehensive renovation to a much loved building, just like our parks, and something that's going to improve its utility for everybody. And lastly, this is a longer term project, but one that's a priority for the council, the city yard. This is where our staff in the orange shirts that you see painting your curbs and replacing your signs and fixing potholes are housed. They have a facility that we've known for a long time needs to be renovated, but it's not going to be inexpensive, and it's going to be a logistical challenge for us as well. So in our last budget, we made sure we had the money to move that project forward. So as soon as our staffing allows, we anticipate moving that project forward so that our folks can have a space that allows them to work as efficiently as we can provide for them. We also did a number of community projects in partnership with community organizations. The Hermosa Beach Murals Project did their final of their 10 and 10 murals. Planning Commissioner Isant was a board member of the Hermosa Mural Society. That is an extraordinary mural on the back of the Bijou Theater. It's just magnificent. And if you look at the back of the room, there's a large framed photograph which shows all 10 of the Hermosa murals that have been done to date. So we thank them, and we've enjoyed that partnership tremendously. We worked with Friends of the Library to move their space, because since we provided the added security of gated parking for our public safety personnel, we had to gate Bard Street at Pier Avenue, and we had to gate the other side right around the Civic Center here. We had to provide access to Friends of the Library, who was in the red building across the street from the Civic Center. And so after a lot of looking around about what happens when you move them here, what are the domino effects of that, we found space for them and we've moved them. So Friends of the Library is up at the community center, and they are in business. We have also made Valley Park improvements in conjunction with Leadership Hermosa Beach. It was Leadership Hermosa Beach's project. We just provided staff time to facilitate it. So you'll see upgrades to the barbecue area at Valley Park. I also want to mention, because I know we have Commissioner Ellman in the audience, who I talk to regularly, that we do continue to have challenges in our parks. South Park is one of them. It's loved to death almost. That park is so popular that the original landscaping we put in wasn't up to the task of the number of kids and the way that they played on it. We recognize that that park needs to be hardened. And that's going to be a longer term capital project for us. But we do want to harden that park, just like we've focused on some of our other facilities at Clark Field and Valley Park, to make sure that it's up to the task of not only our kids who go to that park, but also the kids from around the region who come to that park, as you can see on any given day if you go down there. The next topic I want to touch on is our response to the pandemic and how we supported our businesses through that. The pandemic created both challenges and opportunities for us. And in a very short period of time, we had to basically rework all of downtown, as you now know. We opened up dining decks, we reconfigured lanes. The response from the public has been overwhelmingly positive to that, which is very good to see. So this is a work in progress. We will continue to evaluate it to see what we carry forward on a longer term basis of those changes and how that new relationship is going to work with public right of way being used for commercial purposes. But so far, so good. And that lifeline, I think, as I understand it, has been particularly helpful to businesses, especially during those periods of time during the pandemic when indoor dining, indoor retail was not allowed. As was mentioned in the video, for healthcare facilities, or I shouldn't say healthcare facilities, but gyms, hair salons, that type of thing, we've allowed them to operate outside temporarily. If you're a yoga studio, you were able to operate on the beach. If you had workout classes, you were able to operate on the beach. So we utilized the spaces that we had as much as we could. We listened, we modified those programs, and we did what we could to help. We also, as you heard in the video, have an outdoor live music pilot program, which, as I understand it, is working out well, which is good to hear. Early in the pandemic, we set up drop-off and pickup zones because we knew that restaurants could operate on a takeout basis, but couldn't have on-site patronage. And so we dedicated spaces so that delivery drivers and folks coming to pick up food could utilize those restaurants and utilize that service. And they did. And it was a lifeline for a lot of the businesses. We developed the Economic Development Committee and Stakeholder Group, which Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Campbell are part of. And they are working, as I understand it, on economic development strategies for the future. We just got a report from them. They're talking about a wide range of different things. As important as anything else, as I see it, is the regular dialogue between stakeholders in city government as well as stakeholders in the business community. So the more channels of communication that we have that are active, the more we're going to see each other's side of the story and the more we're going to be able to work together for a result that benefits everybody. In addition to that, we assigned a staff business liaison so that there was a person that our businesses could go to at City Hall. Every new business gets a welcome letter from the city manager, welcoming them to the community and also letting them know who they can reach out to if they have any questions about any aspect of doing business in the city. For all of our work during the pandemic, we were awarded a certificate of recognition by the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation for exemplary work and dedication to helping our small businesses during the pandemic. We were not alone in that. There were a lot of other cities who did a lot of terrific stuff, a lot of innovative stuff. Some of that will be carried forward. We'll evaluate it. We'll take your input, both if you're a business or if you're a resident, and see what we want to carry forward and how that shapes the city going forward. In any event, I believe for most businesses, were able to do what we could reasonably to help them survive the pandemic. And when I drive around town, I see a lot of the same businesses that were here at the beginning of the pandemic, which was the goal from the get-go. And so I think we have succeeded in large part in sustaining our business community through the pandemic, through their hard work, through your hard work as a community, and through some of the decisions we've made and some of the creative ideas that have come from our staff and the Economic Development Committee and otherwise. We reduced parking requirements recently. This has long been a thorny issue in the city, as anybody involved in city government knows. And the world is fundamentally changing. We know that. How people get around is changing. It's pretty clear when you look at the data that people want, especially in a city our size with the kind of amenities we have, the parks and the beach and so on, to have a walkable, bikeable city, to have living streets, in other words, which has been the policy of the city since 2013. Living streets are simply streets that allow people to comfortably and safely pass on them using whatever mode of transportation they want, whether it be a car or a bike or a scooter or anything else. We also know, of course, that folks are using ride-sharing services more than they have to come to City Hall and back. We hear from major umbrella governmental organizations that we're part of, such as the League of Cities or the Southern California Association of Governments, that we know mobility is fundamentally changing and our parking requirements need to keep pace. And we have taken a step in amending some of our parking requirements in our commercial zones to keep pace, to see the future and to adapt to it. Before that, we also, as a council, approved a hotel at the corner of 10th and Hermosa Avenue with an exception to our parking requirements. So we have tried to innovate and we want to test how these new rules work to see whether or not they're adequate and they meet everybody's needs and put our public spaces to their highest and best use. As far as city government goes during the pandemic, we increased access as much as we could, recognizing that we couldn't meet in person. We quickly switched with the help of our staff to meetings by Zoom and to virtual meetings where the council has members who come to council chambers in person and the public can come to council chambers if they want to, and council members can also participate via Zoom and the public can participate via Zoom. So the public now can come down if you want to speak into the microphone and talk directly in the same room with your council members, or you can do it via Zoom, in addition to all the other ways that you can reach us by email and otherwise. We also created a city YouTube channel, which is a repository for some of our important meetings and events that we've had in the city. One example that I'll give you is if you go on the city's YouTube channel, there are multiple videos related to the issue of homelessness, which is an issue in the city, as I mentioned, and one of concern to people. And it periodically ebbs and flows in terms of what the public interest is in it. There are multiple meetings that are current, that are both regional meetings with our beach cities partners, where we talked all about how we're collaborating and what we're doing and the lessons we can learn from each other. And there are also meetings specific to Hermosa Beach, where we bring not only myself and our city staff, but also the resources that we bring to bear to the problem from our faith-based community, from our county partners, and otherwise to address that critical problem. That's the type of content you can find on the city's YouTube channel. So in addition to what you can find on the city's revamped website, you can scroll through all the videos on our city YouTube channel, and you can find a great deal of information about issues of interest to the community. Next, I want to talk about the schools, and I'll do my best not to steal the thunder of our president, Stephen McCall, and our superintendent, Jason Johnson, who I believe in a week are going to have a State of the Schools address. We're unique in the sense that the Hermosa Beach City School District has contiguous boundaries with the city. Their constituents are our constituents. And so we work closely with them, as we have to, because we're a small city. We work with them on getting the bond measure passed. We work with them on building Vista School. We're working with them on renovating View School up on Prospects. We're proud of our school district. We're proud of the pivot they have made to online classes during the pandemic and the reopening for in-person classes, especially in a tight labor market like we have. And it's been well reported how tight the labor market is in the education space. They have had tremendous challenges, and we've worked with them as much as we can to help ease those challenges, to help meet those challenges so that they can provide the best education for our community that they possibly can. If you haven't been by Vista School, you should go. It's a terrific new facility. And you can see in the mornings when you go to and from, the people coming to drop off, the kids going into school, how happy they are to be there, how happy the facility makes them. That investment in our future is paying dividends today. I know it because my daughter goes there. Vista School is under construction right now. And since we had a photo opportunity, I haven't been up there, but I understand that it's a substantial renovation that's underway. And View School, is going to be another community asset when that project is finished very soon. We expanded the STAR education program, which was a key item. During the pandemic, everybody's work schedules got thrown off. And this has been an ongoing challenge that we've met in partnership with the school district, using city space to make sure that there are after-school programs for kids whose parents can't get home by the time school lets out. And they need some enrichment activities. They need some additional supervision in the afternoons using city facilities. That partnership has worked out well, as I understand it. Safe routes to school are another important issue for us, and it goes along with our Living Streets policy. And this is one that has a lot of unfulfilled potential for us. We have a bike master plan that has not been fully implemented. It was adopted a long time ago. We continue to want to implement that as our budget and staffing allows. We also want to take a look at what's in Plan Hermosa, work with the school district, work with our parent community. The Living Streets policy was adopted almost 10 years ago. And ultimately what our goal is, or should be, is to create a network of living streets so that people of all ages, including our school kids, can get to all the amenities in the city, whether they want to go to school, the beach, a park, or downtown. They can get from end to end in the city with their friends safely without having to have mom and dad drive them in a minivan or in a car or something like that, unless mom and dad want to. And that brings us to my last topic, which is sustainability. We have a green business program where we encourage and recognize businesses that are doing their part to keep our beach clean, to keep our environment clean. Environmental issues are key to us as a community because we live on the beach. And the beach is unfortunately where a lot of the runoff ends up. And we see in the wintertime at low tide what the high tide line looks like, what we see in terms of where the trash ends up that's in our storm drain system, that's on our streets. Our businesses are part of that effort. We have Clean-Base certified businesses. We have businesses in the Green Business Program. They're all very aware that being part of the solution is an important part of being a business in Hermosa Beach. And so we celebrate them as much as we can to encourage them and the other businesses in town to be part of the solution and to recognize how much we all love our public spaces and how much we all want them kept clean. The city outlawed single-use plastics to a significant degree in the city because those are the things that are ending up on our beach. And for the most part, they're unnecessary. There are alternatives available when it comes to takeout packaging, plastic straws, whatever you want to describe in terms of what you get with takeout food and otherwise. Eliminating many of the plastic items that are difficult to recycle and litter our beach is part of what we're doing to keep our beach clean and to make it cleaner all the time. It's an ongoing process of education and at times enforcement with our businesses, but most of them are embracing the opportunity, embracing being part of the solution. You probably got a letter recently that we're going to begin requiring residents to recycle organic matter. There is a state requirement coming in a year. We're going to meet that ahead of the curve. That is going to help us not only make sure that some of our food, particularly the food that's generated by our restaurants that is unused, goes to people who are food insecure, but also that we don't fill up our landfills with rotting food that not only takes up space, but creates methane and does all sorts of other things that have negative environmental impacts. If we can divert our organic waste and compost it, that gets reused, and that's exactly what we want, rather than put in a landfill where it costs us money and it has environmental impacts that we'd like to avoid. You will be hearing more about that before the end of the year, and you will have the opportunity to get your green bin so that you can begin putting your organic waste into your green bin and leaving your non-organic waste in your other bins. We've installed a ton of trash capture screens, 70 of them throughout the city, to keep trash out of our storm drain system and off the beach. We have engaged in a climate adaptation planning project. Soon we will be looking at our 5-year benchmark for Plan Hermosa. You recall in Plan Hermosa that we committed to meet the state requirements for reducing our carbon emissions as a city and as a community. And in that plan, the mitigation measures include every 5 years, we have to check to see whether we're on pace to meet that goal. And if we're not, we have to act to do something about it. So that conversation may well involve conversations with our neighbors, Manhattan Beach and Redondo Beach, which are both part of the Clean Power Alliance, which is providing cleaner power than Edison provides to both of those cities, about what that looks like, what the opportunities are there for us, and what alternatives there are to the Clean Power Alliance. I certainly will, and I think we as a council will continue to push our legislators, to address single-use plastics on a statewide level. We are frankly drowning in single-use plastic. You don't have to walk very far on our streets or on our beach or in our parks to see it, whether it's plastic packaging or whether it's utensils or anything like that. That has to be addressed at a broader level than just the city. Our Senator Ben Allen had a bill in the last legislature that didn't get to the governor's desk, which would have taken a significant step towards closing the loop on that cycle, making sure that rather than becoming trash, that plastic waste becomes another recycled product and it gets reused. That didn't get to the governor's desk, but his bill this year did. But we'll continue to push him to have comprehensive solutions so that our community is as clean and as beautiful as we want it to be for not only ourselves, but for future generations. We're going to continue to electrify our operations in our fleet. We've had a fleet use policy for a long period of time that requires us to pick efficient vehicles, provided that they meet the needs that the vehicle is purchased for. And so that process of turning over our fleet continues, and we continue to electrify our fleet and run it more efficiently and at lower cost to the city budget. And we're going to continue to generate more local power from the city through solar power. The Clark Building is going to have solar power on top of it once we complete the renovations, just like the community center has on top of it. We're going to continue to do that, not only because we want to lower our carbon emissions, but because we want to lower our cost of operating our city facilities. So that covers my 7 topics. Let me just say that we chose the theme Back to the Future because that movie is in part a story about how decisions that you make and actions you take have effects generations later. Consistent with that obligation to make choices and take actions to make this a city that our kids are going to want to live in. We'll continue to work alongside our peers and our partners at all levels of government to make Hermosa better for ourselves and coming generations. So thank you all for making Hermosa a great place to live, work, and visit. All right, so I don't have the Dodger score just yet, but somebody probably has it on their phone, and if they want to shout it out, they can. It's 5-0. Okay. So it's 5-0 Braves, but there's lots of game left. What inning is it? Bottom of the 5th. Okay. All right, so now is your opportunity to ask questions. And we have people participating on Zoom. If you're on Zoom, you can submit questions via chat. I'll alternate between questions in the council chambers and questions that are submitted via chat for anybody who wants to ask questions. If you'd like to leave to go watch the Dodger game, don't be shy about doing so. But I want to make sure that you have an opportunity not only to ask me questions, but if I don't know the answer or you want to ask one of our city staff members questions, and we have many of our department directors here, that you have that opportunity to do so. So with that, if you would come up to the microphone in the aisle.
Thank you, Mayor Massey. Commissioner Jan Britton reminds me, this is a very good question, and I'm glad she asked me to ask it. What's the status of Comedy and Magic and Mike Lacey's plans? Do we know? We all depend on it so much, not only for entertainment, but as a fundraising vehicle for so many organizations in the community.
Excellent question.
Thank you, Jan.
Ken, do you have any information on that you'd like to share? This is our Community Development Director, Ken Robertson.
That's a great question, and I wish I had some concrete answers. But that decision is in the owner's hands, and his choice right now is to keep it closed because the market conditions aren't great for comedy clubs. That's all I know. The city is eager to support the reopening, but it's not in the city's hands. I don't have, that's what I know.
Can I ask you a follow-up to that?
Sure.
Ken? Is there any truth to the rumor that there's conflict between the owner of the Comedy Magic Club and the city in some respect?
No, I don't believe so. We've been working closely with the owner, are in frequent conversations with Mike Lacey, and I've been working very closely with the architect on some long-range plans that they're hoping to implement to help sustain their business in the future. But no, there is no conflict. I don't believe so.
There's no outstanding permit or anything like that
No,
they need in order to reopen?
nope. And they could reopen now again if they chose to, or if he chose to.
Thank you, Ken. All right, I'm going to check online really quickly, and then I'll go back to the room. Okay, no questions on chat so far. Are there any questions in the room?
Hi there, Dave Grathan, resident and Public Works Commissioner. I didn't hear too much about the planning and zoning aspect, which is important. So just for completeness sake, maybe at a very high level, talk about some of the pressures we're facing from the state level, some things that may force us to be more dense as a community, the recent passage of SB 9, and our challenge to meet the RENA allocations.
Ken, would you like to address that question again? We have been through accessory dwelling units. The Planning Commission did excellent work with that. That came to council and we approved that. So accessory dwelling units are a type of unit that can be built in the city. As far as the effect of SB 9 or other legislation, I don't know, but I don't know if you, Ken, can make the topic of zoning interesting for the audience, but if you want to take a shot at it, you can. Just explain to them what that process is and where it's at.
Yeah, I'll do my best to make it interesting. I know it's not a sexy topic. The first thing I would say about that question is stay tuned. There is so many things changing when it comes to the state legislation on housing. But we have prepared a draft housing element, I think, as the Planning Commission and the City Council are aware and work diligently on. We submitted it to the State Department of Housing and Community Development, and we are doing our best to meet the regional housing needs allocations that have been placed upon us by the state and through the regional government. And we are at the state where we are at the place now. We are bringing the we'll be bringing the revisions back to the Planning Commission, in fact, next month, because the comments from the state weren't too kind on our draft, but at the same time, they've given us reasonable revisions that we can try to address to meet the State Department of Housing and Community Development. The second part of the question was related to SB 9. We had an initial discussion last night at the Planning Commission. It's a piece of legislation that's hard to understand, but at the most simple level, it is going to require more density in every city. The state is taking a position that they need to preempt local zoning laws to solve the housing crisis. And again, I would say stay tuned. We are going to do our best to align with the goals of the state and meet the requirements of the law. I don't think we have a lot of other options. There will be some, tough policy decisions to be made by the Planning Commission and City Council. But I think generally, I would like to be part of a team that's trying to get out ahead of the issue and be part of the solution, not necessarily try to take the state on. And I didn't know if the mayor wanted to speak, maybe kind of generally the policy level, but again, it's really about staying tuned on how we deal with these tough policy issues.
I'll address briefly the policy issues. Can I just ask you a quick question? And that is, ADUs can be built anywhere in the city. We don't have the ability, as I understand it, to control where ADUs would go. Is the expected density under SB 9 also out of our ability to manage where more density is added?
SB 9 actually gives us a little bit more leeway into how we can address the laws. So that's what we'll be working on in the next couple of months. The ADUs, like you said, we basically, if a property owner wants to add an accessory dwelling unit, we are obligated to allow that project. With SB 9, I don't know how much everyone wants to get into the details, but Senate Bill 9 is going to require us to allow anybody in the single family zone to either split their lot, or in addition to splitting their lot, can build an additional unit on each one of those lots. So theoretically, that could mean 4 units on some of our single family lots. But we can work with developing some standards to make sure that's then consistent to the best possible with our plan, with Plan Hermosa. So we do have some challenges ahead, but it's not, ADUs are kind of an absolute where we have to allow them. And in our housing element, we've identified that we are estimating about 30 accessory dwelling units added to our housing supply annually. So, it's not like everybody in the city is building an ADU. So that's part of our housing element, is that we expect 30 units a year. But with SB 9, it's still too early to say what kind of development that's going to cause and how the city's going to respond to that. So I hope that answers that question. We can talk all night about these issues, but
No doubt. I'll just add from the council's perspective, what I've heard from the council is a concern over who gets to decide what our zoning looks like, whether it's our legislature and governor or whether it's the cities. For me, part of the issue too is ADUs, as an example, don't allow us to control where we are dense, where we are single family and otherwise. And that would be a concern with respect to SB 9 too, is if we lose control over where we can put density, then you end up with just a hodgepodge of neighborhoods that begin to lose their unique characteristics. So there are challenges on multiple levels, strong feelings on multiple levels. Let me check online to see if there's a question. All right. There's a question about whether the homicide of Mr. Woods tempers our support for the DA. Let me just briefly address that. That has not been an issue that has come to us in a great deal of public comment. It's not an issue that any of the council members have initiated to have a discussion about. And so I will leave it at that. It's not an item that is on our agenda or on our future agenda. I don't know what the status of the effort to recall the DA is. My understanding from news reports is that they have stopped gathering signatures for that. So there is no current effort with respect to the DA. I'll simply say from my perspective that criminal justice reform, which was voted in by voters several years ago, is a very complex undertaking and a multi-year undertaking. And to simplify it is to lose some of the nuance and the difficulty and the complexity in that issue. And so it's simply not a matter of is this the person or is this not the person? It's a much more complex issue that requires a look at the problem from a variety of angles. All right. Anybody have a question in the room? All right, seeing none, I will go ahead and go to the next question. All right, this is a question about whether the city is going to consider a tobacco sales prohibition, whether it's on our list. And it's a discussion a little bit, the question has a little bit about the benefits to the public of that. As you may know, we prohibited the sale of flavored tobacco products over a year ago in the city. And now I believe the state and the federal government are beginning to catch up with that because they see the harmful effects of that on the rates of taking up smoking amongst youth, which is something that we knew it wasn't really difficult to spot. When you looked at the marketing, you looked at the nature of the products, that was going to be a problem. And so we recognized that a while ago. During that conversation, we had some challenging conversations with some of our local retailers about what that would do to their business. Because people other than Vaughn, some of our smaller, more convenience store type retailers were concerned that somebody who wanted a pack of smokes wouldn't go to their store if they couldn't get cigarettes, they would go to a big box store or something like that. And so they relied on people who smoke flavored tobacco products to come in and not only buy those products, but buy other products from their stores. And part of those difficult conversations were why flavored tobacco products were particularly harmful. And it's not clear to me yet that there is support in that part of the community for an absolute prohibition on the sale of tobacco products in the city of Hermosa Beach. I think if you look at the data, smoking rates are incredibly low in California and even lower in the South Bay. So there are very few of us that smoke. But whether we prohibit it entirely is a different conversation, a different level. And we haven't had that conversation. And we haven't seen in large numbers the public coming forward and asking us to take that up. No questions from in the room? All right, I'll continue to work down this list. And then I will let you all go as quickly as I can. All right. Question is, why hasn't the Hermosa Beach Council passed a resolution in favor of local control of zoning? I don't believe it passed a resolution, but we did approve a letter to our legislators in opposition to SB 9 and I think it was SB 10, the other bills that the legislature considered, and some of which were enacted into law related to zoning. So we have in fact taken a position in opposition to some of those bills. And all of the significant ones, as I understand it. Okay. Can we consider paving a pathway across the BARC path at 16th Street and 21st Street so that bicycles and wheelchairs can cross the BARC path on those streets? Okay. That's a much bigger and more specific question. Our open space is very carefully zoned. So paving any of it, whether it be for a little corner for parking or for a bike path, is, as anybody knows who's heard about the rumors of decomposed granite on the Greenbelt knows, it's not a small issue, not only because of our zoning rules, but also because of where the community's at. I think many folks in the community, especially folks who have been around and fought hard for the Greenbelt to be preserved in its current state, are very protective of it, as they should be, just as we are with our parks and our beach. And we don't want to harden any of it unnecessarily, because when you start to do that, it can snowball and you can find yourself chipping away at the few public spaces that we have. So I certainly understand that folks coming from Ardmore to Valley School, for example, at 16th, or wanting maybe to get to Vista School down at 21st, So basically to cross the Greenbelt from Ardmore to Valley, it would be easy for folks on bikes if we had some sort of a hardened path across the Greenbelt at those locations. The problem you have is not only our rules that govern how we preserve that space, but also having a path bisect the Greenbelt affects the usability of the Greenbelt for folks who are using the Greenbelt itself, as opposed to just crossing over. And so it's a long answer to a question about whether we have considered that. The answer is we have not considered it, but living streets is our policy, and we want to make sure that we provide safe passage for everybody around the city. And however we can do that, consistent with how we value open spaces like the Greenbelt, is something that we will certainly consider. That's it for those questions. Last call for questions in the room. Commissioner Ellman.
Barbara Ellman, Park Department Commissioner. Do we have an update on access on the beach, where we are with the access pads?
Angela, do you want to address that if there's any additional information on that? I know we had concern raised after Fiesta Hermosa, and Jessica can present this, that the bike corral used some of the Moby mats that were out south of the pier. And so during that Labor Day weekend, when Fiesta was happening, apparently their access to the beach was a little bit limited. Is that your question, is about access to the beach, or is it about? Okay. So I'm going to call up our Deputy City Manager, Angela Crespi. The question is there any update as to the city's extension of the access point south of the pier or at another location in the city so that folks needing that for access to the beach can get closer to the water?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So regarding the current path, the study that's in place right now is that we have a winter length and then we have a summer length. So what you saw with the white interlocking tiles this past summer that's been in place since January is the summer length. So we do take that out as far as we can to the beach path without interfering with public safety access across the beach. What you'll see now is recently Public Works has taken the path back to what we call winter length. And that's because they do build the berms. The county comes through and builds the sand berms to protect the towers and things like that during the winter. So staff has recently removed the white interlocking tiles on the length of it and installed one of the rollout mats. So what we were doing was piloting the interlocking tiles. And since January, Public Works staff has looked at the durability and the maintenance that's required for those tiles. And they were not only problematic to get because they're hard to obtain from the manufacturer, but they're also not really holding up well in our environment. So what we've recommended at the staff level is to move towards the Moby mats, which is what the county beaches are using. And so we have that out for the winter length right now. And then we'll be bringing the discussion forward to City Council when we have the ADA study session, should be this winter. When we have our ADA transition plan come from our consultant, we'll be having a larger discussion about the future of this pilot program. Our consultant did identify other possible areas, but that'll be a discussion with council.
Can I ask a quick question? We had a problem with the Moby mats and their durability first. Have they changed the manufacture of those so that they don't rust and disintegrate like our first version of it?
Our superintendent let me know that the ones that we piloted on the beach before were a different type of Moby mat. So the ones that we have out there right now and the ones that the county are using are the ones that we piloted on the Greenbelt previously. So the ones that you saw on the beach prior were not the same ones that are out there now. So we've switched the type. And so the county is having a lot of success with this type of rollout mat on the beach.
So we think that they'll be able to withstand. So we think the new versions of the Moby mats will be able to be durable enough to withstand the use for more than one season.
Correct. And that's what the county is seeing and the different cities seeing at their beach deployments. And then also that the openings in the mat do allow sand to penetrate. And so it keeps a more level surface for people. And it's a little easier to maintain in terms of it not getting covered up with sand.
Thank you. Last call for questions. We've kept you for quite a while. Thank you all a ton for being here. Thank you for all your contributions to the community. Have a wonderful night. Go Dodgers.